You're listening to the Mind Your Business podcast, episode number 37. Today, we're answering another listener question of the week, and we're talking all about how to grow, scale, and step into that CEO role in your business. So, stay tuned. Hi, I'm James Wedmore, and I've built a 7-figure internet business that offers the financial freedom to do what I want, when I want. And I'm the first to say that hard work and hustle are not essential ingredients for your success. So, how do you build a thriving business from the inside out? This is the Mind Your Business podcast, featuring myself and co-host Phoebe Mroczek. All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Welcome to the show. I'm your co-host, James Wedmore. Do you see what I did there?
I know. I was waiting for the I'm your host, and then I was going to correct you.
There's actually a small, slight hesitation in that. I am the co-host, James Wedmore.
Phoebe Mroczek, your other co-host.
Co-host / anchor / awesome human.
Duh. / friends.
Hashtag. It is time for another question of the week. I'm really excited for this one. I feel like we start every episode going, I am so excited for this episode. It's the best one yet. But at least if we tell you why, you'll believe us. And this is because our question comes from someone that both Phoebe and I know and love. She is one of our Inner Circle Mastermind members, the phenom, superstar, teacher turned entrepreneur, and founder of Deep Space Sparkle, Patty Palmer.
I feel like you just announced her as though she's coming on a game show. That was great.
Or that she's like fighting in a boxing match. I love Patty. It has been such a pleasure to get to know her. I remember when her application came in for the Inner Circle, because like the first line is like your name and then the second line is like your website, and it said deepspacesparkle.com. I don't know.
That is the best name ever.
I don't think I read anything else in the application. I just went straight to the website. I was like, what is this? And you can learn more about Patty over on her website, deepspacesparkle.com. But her story is so incredible because, and I apologize, Patty, if you're listening to this and I mess your story up a little bit, but from my recollection, and Phoebe, maybe you can correct me if I make any mistakes here, Patty was a grade school art teacher, right? And she started this website on the side to the point where she was able to turn it into a full-time income. And then I think it was last September of 2015, she was able to finally go full-time online and do this as a full-time business.
Well, and I know she was a little bit hesitant to do that because she loves teaching so much, and that was what really came through in her application. This is really the first time that she's going to leave her art teaching position, and she loves the students and loves all this. And one thing stuck out to me very clearly in her application when she was saying that there was a school, I want to say it was in Pakistan, that started, and the only art curriculum is from Deep Space Sparkle, and that was one of her biggest accomplishments. And I just thought that was so awesome. I love Patty, and when she talks, she just exudes this enthusiasm for teaching and for business, and she's got a really great balance going on both sides of that. So it's been really just such a pleasure to watch her grow, and she has made such progress in her business this year. It's really, really exciting. And
in an industry where you hear so many people talk about, are the only people that have an online business people teaching others how to have an online business? And we just say, go to deepspacesparkle.com. Yeah. There you go. So let's go ahead and ask Patty's question. Phoebe?
So Patty asked, with regards to growing and scaling a business, what advice can you share that will help turn a do-it-all entrepreneur into a CEO? How do I let someone else do the things that I love?
This is a fantastic question. I think what we're really going to do, because it's the Mind Your Business podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about the mindset of growing and scaling and stepping into a CEO role. And we'll have a little bit of a discussion about this, a little back and forth, and hopefully I can offer some insight on what my experience has been going from starting a business on my laptop in my parents' basement to where I am here today. So let's start out and really ask the question that Patty and anybody else that feels like, yes, I'm ready to scale and grow and become the CEO. Why do you want to scale? Why do you want to grow? And I think this is an important question that we really have to ask, because it does feel like the natural tendency for entrepreneurs to think that growing and scaling and hiring a team and doing all these things is the only next step, right? That's the only next thing for them. I think it was a mentor of mine who I finally had that conversation with, where they're like, you don't have to have a business that grows up into this whole thing with a team and an HR department and putting your big boy pants on, right? So I think it's a really important question to ask. And I want to share a story that is hard for me to share, which is what made me want to share it. This is probably the hardest story I've ever had to share, but it was a very vulnerable moment for me, and it didn't happen that too long ago. It was almost 2 years ago. That was really 2 years ago. So it was like end of 2014, coming into 2015. I had made some decisions. So I don't even think it was 2 years ago. It was like, 18 months or something like that. I had made some decisions recently to grow. So I brought on a bigger team, a higher level team, and I had my first month in business. Now, there are some exceptions to this. I'll explain all that, but I mean, this was an initial shock where when I looked at my P&L, we brought in, again, I'm sharing details and it's hard, but I'm doing it. So I had a month where we generated about $75,000 in sales for the month, and my costs were $75,000. And it just dropped me to my knees. It was intense. I was just took the wind out of me. Now, that was at first glance, and there are some things we actually, just paid a quarterly taxes or some tax something at that, so there was some IRS thing for $15,000 in there. I think we paid out a few affiliates from our previous promotion. So it was one of those perfect storms. So it wasn't really as bad as it was, but it was really an experience of seeing a lot more costs than I'd ever seen, even if there were some things that are okay, this is just any other month that, it all evens out, And I think that's one difference that we have is that when we're as Patty used, the do-it-all entrepreneur, you may not be making as much revenue, or the business isn't, but you see a much bigger profit margin. And I remember a moment where I had to call my coach at the time because I had just a total panic attack. I'm just freaking out. I'm like, this is it. Because I remember I had done stuff that month to make that $75,000. I was like,
right. And $75,000 is nothing to laugh at, which it's a lot of money. And to think that your expenses, my God, can't imagine.
And I remember just breaking down to him on the phone and just being like, why can't I just be that guy with my one virtual assistant? Because that's what I started with. It was just me and a virtual assistant. I kind of feel like it was a kid and his dog Skip. It was James and his VA back in the parents' basement, or, real low cost living, making my $150,000 to $200,000 a year. Why can't it just be that? And I'll never forget what he said to me because it scared the crap out of me. His response when I said that was yeah, I hear ya. And I'm like, wait.
That's what you wanted to hear.
No, it wasn't. I wanted to hear that, listen, you're going to come out of this fine. And this is, and I did. I really did. And our costs are I remember having months where it's your expenses for the month were $600. And now we have expenses that, can range from $25,000 to $45,000 a month, but we're making substantially more than that. You get okay with that, but there definitely was a transition. And I will say that there are other things like that come at the expense of growing up into the big business. And I'm not here to scare people. I am here to make sure that you're fully informed and you make the appropriate decisions that work for you. Stepping into the CEO role means taking on some new responsibilities for who you are. And we're going to talk about that in a moment because those were things that I didn't really enjoy at first. And that's actually why I was having the biggest breakdown of all. We'll talk about that. But then what I found is that having these higher expenses really started putting pressure on the business. You hear about big companies when they say well, who makes the decisions? Or what is the decision for? It's in favor of the shareholders. And you feel the pressure of, well, we got to appease the shareholders. You kind of feel in a very similar sentiment to that, in that you're I have these big costs. I got to pay my team. I got to do what it takes. And you realize that can be a good thing or a bad thing. It's really how you want to interpret that. One way it can be very motivating. It's, you don't let your own fears, considerations, and concerns get in the way of your profitable business, because now you realize, and this was hard for me at first, it's oh my gosh, these are living, breathing human beings with families, with mortgages, with rents, with car payments, with kids. And if I mess up, I was going to use a more profane word, but I'll keep it PG. If I, fool around here and don't take things seriously, there are some stakes at play here. Now that I've scared all of our listeners away, we'll actually talk about how to do this, but I really want people to make sure that this is what they want and why. So before we continue, I think this is really important that this is something you know what you're getting yourself into, and you know that this is truly what you want, and you know why. And usually it has to come down to having a desire to create something bigger than yourself and having a vision. Being a startup entrepreneur, do-it-all-yourself entrepreneur, you don't really need a big vision. But the moment you bring other people on, you create a team, it becomes essential. And I realized there was a lot I had to learn, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. First, let's look at some of the problems that I do feel like people have resisting stepping into this role. And I think there's a lot of fear around letting go and a fear of it not being perfect anymore.
Yeah, I think we talked about that a little bit on the outsourcing episode. But for me personally, I started to develop a team last year, and I had this guy in Bahrain who asked to come on full time. And I remember having such a breakdown around that and was like, I don't know if this is what I want. And when I went back to the question, why, I was like, well, because that's just what everyone's doing. I was like, well, that's a terrible idea. So I also, once I was like, no, that's not what I want, I had this whole fear. He was doing all my Facebook ads. And my fear of like letting go was I'm spending other people's money. And if I don't do it right and I don't like micromanage him, it's not going to be perfect. I just can't let that go. I can't release that power and that feeling that like, I know what I'm doing, but am I teaching him in a way that he knows what he's doing and he's going to be able to create these ads in a way that I know how to. So I had a huge block around that of letting go, of it not being perfect. And it was just a lot of like training and being able to kind of release that pressure from myself as well.
And I want to promise people that there is a way to create a vision and step into that CEO role where that doesn't happen. Because I didn't think that that was possible. I thought I always kind of had to micromanage people and do it my way. And you're like, oh my gosh, all I'm doing all day is spending all day managing them. We'll talk about that a little bit. So I think the first thing, if you're willing to overcome these problems, like I faced that resistance. I was like, I can't let this go and it's not perfect. I'll just do it myself anyways. And then you have people on your team that you're paying like full time who are just sitting there twiddling their thumbs and like, what do I do now? What do I do now? And now. And I'm just like, I'll just do it. That's not good. But I do think that the first step to answer Patty's question and anybody else's is that we really have to, as cliche as it sounds, we have to have a vision. And I think the vision has to not just be clear, but you have to love the vision more than the stuff that you're loving already, Patty. So because Patty's question was, how do I let someone else do the things that I love? And we'll answer that more specifically. I think the vision itself of what you're creating, what you're up to, what you're excited about, what's possible for you, your business, your students, and subscribers has to be the ultimate love. And if it is, then you realize that you're going to have to sacrifice some of the things that you've done or let go or give up some of those things because it's serving something bigger, okay? And I think the vision, when it's very clear, has to be measurable. My team knows what our vision is. We have an overarching vision. We've identified, Chelsea read the book Good to Great. I haven't read it for years. It's a great book, Good to Great, right? And they talk about, and I'm paraphrasing through Chelsea's synopsis of the book, so this is going to be awful, but they talk about, identifying like what is the one thing that you can do better than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And we really identified it as that it, for me, being the coach and consultant of the company and the face and the name and all this stuff, is causing breakthroughs for business owners. That's really how we want to differentiate ourselves, that anything that we produce content-wise isn't just content, but it's something that can access an insight, an idea, an aha, or a breakthrough for somebody else. As people work with me on higher and higher levels, they start to see where that comes through. And my team knows that. And we know that that's what we're up to doing, that that's our vision, and that's what we're committed to doing for our students and customers. But we also have a way to measure that vision. I think it's very dangerous. This is my opinion, and people have opposing opinions, to have those visions of like, I want to inspire 1 million entrepreneurs. I don't really get excited about those things, personally. I just don't, because I'm like, how will you know when you've done it? How do you measure the inspiration? And how do you know when you hit 1 million? How do you know if you hit 1? And so I think it is important that your team and you always knows where you are so that you do know where you're headed and you know where you've come from. Because I think we all need to know progress. We all need to know, we as in your team, that we're on the right track, that we've made a difference, that we're getting closer. And so now that can be simple as goals, like financial goals. That can be as simple as, especially for Patty, and a number of members. Our goal is to have X thousand members in our paid membership program. And your team can get enrolled by it. So it doesn't have to be this like altruistic thing, but it has to be like, this is what we're doing. Does that make sense? What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, the other thing is when you're creating your vision, this is something that I was learning when we were doing the vision thing, creating the vision a couple weeks ago, was getting everyone else's feedback and input. I thought that was a really interesting way of doing it, because it's not just this is what James thinks and it's, a top-down approach. It was very much like we're all sitting on Skype or in the office talking about what are we best at and what is that actual vision, which I do believe that started with you, initiating that conversation and talking openly about your vision for the business and for the team and all of that. But when we got a little bit more input from everyone else, for me personally, it kind of hit home. It just really drove home the point of what we're out to create. And I think that was a really cool way of doing it, and something that I would encourage if you do have a team to sit down, and obviously that conversation starts with you expressing your own vision, but getting input and buy-in and enrolling your team members is a really important way of getting that vision out there into the world.
Yeah, and if we start with the vision, I think your number one job becomes protecting the vision, right? And so one of the things that I love is that as the CEO, it becomes your job to be responsible for determining what to do, but not how to do it. So like the easy way to do it is say like, what equals me, how equals team. And this becomes a powerful mantra that I have to remind myself of. James, you focus on what to do, what to do, what to do. Let them figure out how to do it, how to do it, how to do it, right? So for an example, I could say, guys, I want to create a sales page where there's a pop-up at the bottom that says blah, blah, blah. I don't know, I just made something up at the top of my head. I'm not going to go in there and tell them how to do that. I could tell them what the goal is, why I want to do it, the intention behind it, what my idea is, and then I can sit there and say, hey, here's a programmer we have, here's a place to go find a programmer, or here's a screenshot or a link to someone else who's done something similar. Can you get this by Friday, right? And I think that's a huge distinction with the CEO, and the role that we have to take is you focus more on the what and much less on the how. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you through a classic example. This is everybody listening, that if you've heard one business book before, you've probably heard this example before, but it's so important. And instead of tuning this out, you get the opportunity to actually do it or do it again, because I've heard this a million times or several times, but I still do it. So that has something to say here. And what we want to do is, this is basically, you want to take a piece of paper and you want to make 4 columns across the piece of paper. And inside each one of these 4 columns, you're going to write down 4 different hourly wages. All the way on the left, you're going to do $10 an hour. The next one is $100 an hour, then $1,000 an hour, and then $10,000 an hour. So Phoebe, did I explain that clear enough so people can get that? Yeah. Okay. So your job is for the next day, the rest of the week, heck, even the rest of the month, you simply write down everything that you do in a day. But you must determine what category it falls into. So Phoebe, what is something that you have done in the last 24 to 48 hours?
I have been writing a lot of copy.
Writing copy. What type of copy? Let's get specific.
So launch email copy.
Writing email copy for a launch. Which category would you put this in?
I would say it's in the $1,000 an hour category.
I would agree with that. And, you could probably find a good copywriter at $200 to $500 an hour, maybe even at $100 an hour. But this is copy for a launch that if you spent an hour writing this email, this could make you more than $1,000. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely put it at the $1,000 hour. And another way to look at this is, if you did pay a qualified person $1,000 an hour, would they do a good job? Could you find someone that's qualified who's really good to do this for $1,000? I think the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, could you find it $100? It's going to be a lot harder. $10, good luck with that. Okay, anything else?
I'm about to get in trouble, I think. I was creating a offer page inside of Samcart for our upcoming launch as well.
Why are you going to get in trouble?
Well, because it was just the time change, because I should not have been doing that. And I know someone on our team who can do it just as well as I can. But
okay, got it. I see where you're going. Okay, so which column is that?
So I would say that's in the $10 an hour task.
It is, because I have created a process map on how to do this, Phoebe.
That's what I'm saying. I knew I was about to get in trouble.
We have the most simple, we use an analogy that a lot of my students know about, the Lego instruction manual. We have literally a step-by-step Lego instruction manual for how to create a new product inside Samcart, so that following my directions of what I like on a page, and we could give that to one of our tech team outsourcers in the Philippines, and they could do that for less than $10 an hour. Okay, so you would put that in the $10 an hour. And how long did that take you? 30 minutes?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, so I owe you $5. So, all right, I'll pay you that later. Okay, so this is great. Now, here's an example. I'm going to do this on myself, and we're going to see where this one goes. So today, one of the things I did is I reached out to good friends and peers in the industry and past customers who have been tremendous students, and I asked them for, this is a hard one, case studies and testimonials for my upcoming product. Where does that go? That's tough, huh?
Yeah. Because I kind of feel like someone on your team could do it, but it might not be as effective.
That's how I feel. I feel. I do think someone on my team, I look at Jilly and I could be like, listen, here's 10 people. I would love if you reached out. But I still chose to do it because I wanted to have a personal touch point with these customers, and maybe I'll get a better testimonial because of it. Who knows? But I think that's either the $100 or $1,000 an hour assignment. It's still something that you could hire someone for $100 and they could do. So here's what's going to happen. If you have a business similar to ours where you have coaching, content, it's an online type business, and not everyone who listens to the show does, but businesses that are most similar to ours, here's what you're going to find out. You're going to have a lot of these data entry, small technical things I had to upload a video to YouTube. I had to format a blog post. You're going to have all these little technical things, and even graphic assignment type, simple graphics. I just need this little button made. A lot of it's in the $10 an hour category. Then you're going to have these $100 an hour assignments, which are going to be things that are probably where we're spending a lot of our time. And then there's a few things $1,000, which is the copywriting and making your course videos. Yes, that's in $1,000. If you're creating the content, that's in the $1,000. And then you're going to realize that you spend very, very little time, if any, in this fourth and elusive category or column, the $10,000 an hour category. So what the heck goes there? Ultimately, at the end of the day, I reserve $10,000 an hour activities for strategic planning, decision-making, and deal-making. Right? So if I can book a JV deal where someone's going to promote me and we're going to make 20 grand together, and that conversation got handled hey, Phoebe, will you promote me? And we make 20 grand together. That 30-minute conversation is very hard to have someone else do that for you. It's possible, but it's challenging. So that's where I'm going to spend my time. Coming up with the strategy and planning for which products we're selling, how we're selling them, how we're marketing them, what the offer is, how we're executing it. All of that tends to be in the $10,000 an hour category. Here's an example. When we jump into a launch, my entire team gets on these daily Scrum calls. We've talked a little bit about Scrum. And right before we jumped into this one launch, I decided, hey guys, I think we should do a free Facebook group with our video series in the launch. Everyone was like, I don't know. And at the end of the day, when the launch was all done, I asked my business partner, how do you think the Facebook group went? And he said, I think that was directly responsible for the most number of sales and customers. And we did the math. 89% of our customers were in that Facebook group and posted at least once in the Facebook group. 89% of the customers in a $350,000 launch. That was a 5-minute conversation and discussion and a decision that was had. I didn't implement the Facebook group. I was never even in there. I mean, I popped in and said hi maybe 3 times, but adding that idea is at the 10,000. This is where masterminding, coaching, mentoring, even listening to a podcast where someone's sharing $1 million ideas is, believe it or not, the $10,000 an hour level. I mean, guys, like, I'm going to go on a rant here for a second, and I'm sorry. Patty wishes we could just answer her question in 5 minutes. I'm sure the rest of you guys wish you could. I just can't do it. I can't do it because this is something that blows my mind. So many people are out there sitting here just saying, just tell me the steps so I can just do it. Why do I have to pay so much money or all this stuff? Like, that's such the small thinking. All these little action steps and little things that can keep you busy 16 hours a day. Of course, I don't know. I don't get it. But that's why you invest more, because at those higher levels, you're getting that one little nugget that can have all the difference in the world. Patty already knows that, but I'm just, so I'm preaching to the choir here. Okay. If you decide to do this assignment for you, if you decide to take this on in your life and actually write down every activity and action item that you complete into one of these 4 columns, here's what's going to happen. You are going to feel really, really uncomfortable because a lot of the stuff that you do ends up in the $10 and $100 hour activities. And then you realize, wait a second, I've only got 8 hours a day, but I'm working 10 hours. And most of that time is spent, at an average of like $50 an hour total. So here you are making no more than $500 a day, working your tail off, and you have a virtual assistant, and you're like, oh my goodness, no wonder I'm not making the money I want to make. No wonder we're not scaling and getting to the level I want. I'm spending too much of my time in these smaller wage columns or categories. I need to focus more or start my day with more of the time in the $1,000 and $10,000 category. We could do an entire episode really diving deep on this because I've really played a lot around it with what is in the $1,000, what is in the $10,000. And it's a very fascinating conversation. But I hope that helps. I hope you try that on. I hope you do it because it works. It's very eye-opening. Does that make sense, Phoebe? Is that helpful, you think?
I do have one question for you. So a lot of online business that I am witnessing and a part of and in the communities that I, frequent, people are networking so much on Facebook and in Facebook groups, and they're posting and all of this stuff. Where do you think that falls? I mean, not as far as like actual like little posting, but in the networking and the relationship building inside of Facebook groups, because I feel like for me, Facebook groups are an absolute time suck. And before I know it, it could be 3 hours and before I get my head above water, I'm like, what just happened? Because that's kind of a gamble, right?
Well, no, it's not. Okay, and here's because this is the greatest question of all time. This is going to sting for some people. But the answer is, like, people are looking for this absolute answer, and it all comes down to what's your intention. Most people aren't going in there without any intention. Now, I'm not talking about like, oh, I have ulterior motives. No. It's about saying, this is my business model. And I know that if I have more exposure in front of my ideal audience and when I run ads to them or I have more conversations with them, I can then turn those into something else. It's going to be higher up in the columns here over towards the right side. But most people don't do that. They hear that someone else said, yeah, I drummed up a lot of business because I was in a lot of Facebook groups networking. And so they just say, I'm just going to do that. They focus solely on actions, not knowing what these actions are supposed to produce or what the intention behind the actions are, or, hitting that measurable metric that says, yes, this is working. They're just talking. There's just a lot of talking and like, oh, look at me, but I post every day. I mean, I don't get it. There's no intention or strategy. I'm a huge strategy guy, and I think a lot of people don't have strategy. So if you don't have strategy and you're in there all day, it's not even a $10 an hour task. That's why it stings. If there is focus and intention behind it, like I've gone into a group and just answered someone's question, and this is a really poor example, but someone will be like, oh my goodness, James Wedmore's answered my question. This is amazing. And I realized that in that moment, I had a profound impact on someone's life. That's more than $10,000.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, that's like, whoa, right? When someone tags me saying all the times people, and I thank everybody for this, well, someone will be like, hey, what's a good podcast to listen to? And someone mentions us. Anytime I'm tagged, so I'm aware of it, I don't know, if they don't tag me, I have no idea, I go in there and I say thank you. Yep. Now that's worth $10,000 to me, because right now I really want to foster a community around the podcast, and I'm willing to acknowledge the people that are acknowledging us. That's worth my time. But if you're just sitting there talking and you don't know what you're talking about and you're just like talking, which I'm not saying anybody here is, but I've seen it, that's $10 an hour. Okay. All right. Patty, you opened up a can of worms. I love opening can of worms, but I have to kind of put the worms back in the can. So what we're getting at here is, if you want to inch your way into this and step into the CEO role, we got to spend more of our time in the $1,000 and the $10,000 an hour activities. And we need to find systems or people or software or solutions to fulfill on these $10 to $100 an hour activities. Okay. And what this really ends up happening for you, this is what happened for me, is we ultimately step up into this leadership role where our number one skill, besides holding this vision fast, to the team, is becoming an effective communicator. And that is deserving of its own episode, because that's a skill that takes a lifetime of mastery right there. But that's really where I found the pool that I'm playing in every day, is how to lead, communicate, and inspire my team. I find myself it's funny today. I think that's the big shift for me. And so that's why I really, Patty, knowing you, you really want to ask, is this really what I want? Because ultimately the shift from the do-it-yourself entrepreneur to the CEO is really meaning you go from loving your customers and having them be number one to actually they become number two. And number one is your team. And that's something that I don't think anybody else who has a team and is that CEO would disagree with me. My dedication and my commitment is to them first, above anybody that we've ever served as a customer. It's I care about them first, always. And I think that's something that has to happen if you step into that. So you may not want to, maybe there's a happy medium and a balance. So I don't know. We got to play around with this. I don't know if this was, Patty, what you wanted to hear or what anybody else wanted to hear, but I think there are stepping stones to it. I wouldn't do what I did, which is just start hiring a bunch of people and paying them really expensive salaries. But, having virtual assistants, whether it's overseas, like in the Philippines or just somewhere, in the US, or, starting to look for ways to systematize and outsource these $10 an hour tasks is a really good place to start before just jumping in.
Yeah, knowing why you're doing it is really, really important. So start with that first.
So what do you think, Phoebe? Do you think I did a good job at answering this?
I definitely do. There's one thing that I did want to kind of draw attention to, which is the language in Patty's question, because this is something for me personally, I'm trying to become much more aware of my own language and catch myself when I say things that either aren't serving me or that are limiting me in a very specific way. And so when I was reading her question, I saw her say, how do I let someone else do the things that I love? And that to me was very telling, because there seems to be kind of a negative spin on that, in a way that I think if maybe she changed her language around it, and rather than saying, how do I let someone else do the things that I love, but saying rather, how do I empower someone else to do the things that I love or the things that we love? And so I would just, Patty, challenge you to kind of try that on and see how that feels. Because I think when you put a more positive spin on it, it's going to help you kind of see a bigger vision and allow yourself to kind of open up to that possibility of, it's not just me anymore. It's I get to allow other people to come in on my vision with me. How exciting is that? So how do I empower people? How do I motivate other people to help create this vision that I'm creating for myself and for my customers?
Yeah. And I think that's really good to point out. And I think what I was really trying to communicate is that it might be hard to let go and give up of the things that you love, unless there's something that you fall in love with more. And that has to take its own natural progression. I don't think we should force that or anything, but that is a bigger vision. That is this idea of stepping into a more leader-oriented role, having an impact not just on your customers, but on a team, which is what we've really created. And I love it. I did not think I was going to like it. I hated it. That story I told at the beginning, I was just I was ready to just let go of everybody and go back to me and a virtual assistant. And I'm I don't care anymore how much money, we got to make all this money. No, I'm just going to get by and do my thing. And
your own sanity so you don't pull all your hair out.
Exactly. But, hopefully we've made some great points for you, but it's such a big conversation here, because the other thing, which we haven't even talked about, but we'll leave this as a, something to ponder, is that a lot of what Patty's business does is around creativity. It's teaching art. So, I do think her being the teacher is in the $1,000 an hour level of activity. So it could be a challenge to find someone to start creating curriculums without her. Mm-hmm. But I know her students, her top pupils, and other art teachers could be some that she could bring in. That's how I found Phoebe, is that, she was a student of my work. And we said, hey, do you want to help out? Some of your best team members are going to be your biggest fans. So that's also something to think about when it comes to filling those roles. So Patty, great question. Always awesome to hear from you. If you guys want to check out Patty's stuff again, it's Deep Space Sparkle. affirmations.com. Great question, great conversation. If any of you have a burning question on your noggin, please visit mindyourbusinesspodcast.com and leave that question so we can feature you in one of our upcoming episodes. Nothing is off topic. Nothing is off limits. We would love to hear from you. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't reviewed us yet on iTunes, you can do that now by visiting www.jameswedmore.com/iTunes. We love the reviews. Please keep them coming, and it's really helping getting our message and our podcast into more people's hands and ears. All right, we'll see you all next time. Take care. Are you frustrated that no matter how hard you hustle, no matter how much you get done in a day, you still feel like you have little results to show for it? Do you feel like you're doing everything right, but there's still something missing? Well, what if there was an easier way? What if your business could be fun, effortless, and profitable? Phoebe and I have put together a free audio MP3 for you, compiling the 77 business affirmations for creating success from the inside out. And we want to give it to you absolutely free. This is your chance to rewire your brain for bigger results in your life and your business. To get instant access absolutely free, simply visit 77affirmations.com. That's the number 77affirmations.com.